So like a lot of you lovely people, I often think of guitar playing as like this journey, right? Just a small town girl. And with any sort of journey, you start to notice a couple trends along the way. And one of those trends that I keep noticing actually goes back way farther than I initially thought. You see, when I was a very, very young guitar player, one of the first pedals that I ever got was this multi-effects pedal. It was only $60. It had 2 knobs on it. It had like distortion, delay, reverb, everything that you could think should be in a multi-effects pedal. And even though it was only $60 at the time, I thought, wow, I cannot believe that they can fit all of these effects into one little pedal. This is crazy. This must be the future, like some Marty McFly level stuff. But what I didn't know was that it was about to get even crazier. You see, as the years went by, I started to notice that not only did people have these multi-effects units, but those multi-effects units now had amp modelers and cab impulse responses on them. The expectation kind of shot up. And I'm not really a stranger to this notion. You see, for the past 6 months or so, I've had an amp modeler and an impulse response at the end of my board. And I've talked about before how it took me like 5 years to find it, and I really have enjoyed it, and it's really been useful for like live settings and times where I really am trying hard not to annoy my neighbors. However, I've mostly been using it as like a pedal platform, something just to be used as the amp and then plugging my pedals into it to really get all those effects. And that's been cool. But having that unit there has had me asking the question for quite a little bit now, what would it be like for me to really step all into the future and really dive deep into the world of all-in-one solutions, not just having that amp and that IR cab response, but having a single pedal or a single unit that can act as my entire rig. Can I, even just for a moment, take amps completely out of the picture and see if I can adapt to this future? And that's when I decided to stay up till 2:30 in the morning. Yes, 2:30 in the morning. And I had found that Blackstar had come out with their amp series of pedals, which is like this all-in-one pedal solution. But I wanted to push things to the extreme, because that's what we do here. The Rock only does extreme. And yes, I just referred to myself as The Rock in that scenario. But I found they had released their Amp 2 series. So here's how we're gonna get this done, right? We're gonna power it up, and we're gonna go straight in XLR. It's really nice to not have to mic up an amp right now. I'm just gonna go direct in through my guitar. So with any sort of new piece of gear that I buy, or with any sort of new experiment that I try, the first question I have to ask myself is, when I strip it down to the bare bones, when I only have the amp and a tiny hint of reverb as like a room noise, will it actually sound good? And this thing has 3 separate amps, the first of which is like a US amp, which is the cleanest one. So like I said, I put that on, I took a little bit of reverb, and I turned everything else off. And I wanted to see, how will it actually react? Will it actually sound like a real amp? So the second thing I did is I wanted to see like the primary drive functions, because that's sort of been an always on pedal for me in like a neo soul context or like a clean solo context. And that was just to test it a little bit more to see like how some of the different like specific pedals would work even if I'm still on the same amp. And here's where I got to the good stuff. The good stuff is where I started switching up the amps, because I already knew I liked the sound of like the cleans, but now I wanted to throw on a bunch of effects and just really like put the pedal to the metal, pun intended. So I put on the UK amp, which is a little bit higher gain. I threw on the reverb, I threw on the delay, because I feel like those are the type of people who are really gonna vibe with a pedal like this, an all-in-one like amp pedal solution. The people who go to like those ambient tones like I do, or people who would play like pop music live and use a little bit more reverb or delay. And now came the interesting part. The interesting part is not when you do the things that the amp is supposed to do. The interesting part is when you can do the things that it's not supposed to do. And where I'm very finicky on a lot of these units is not for someone who would even go higher gain, but someone who would go into like classic rock and or fuzz and would need like a very non-digital sound. Because even if something sounded good, I feel like people who go into like the blues rock setting at a live gig, they want that real amp sound and would very much be the least likely person to use something like this. And that's where I really found the capabilities of the amp. That's when I first really got to go into the Architect software and change things up. So I put on a new mic, I put on a new cab on the amp, I changed up the room noise so it was a little bit wider so it could get even more of like a realistic sound. Different softwares before, and I've talked about how it's taken me a little while with certain softwares, but like this is where I really started to find that like there's a simplicity to Architect software that I didn't find overwhelming, because I feel like with a lot of like the digital amp units, especially ones with a touchscreen board, you can kind of get lost in everything. And if you want those different viability options, if you want like a million different things, that's fine, and that can be really cool, but like there's kind of a beauty in the simplicity of the way this Architect software works. There are like 5 or 6 different parameters, you can just get to it. And I really like that just in having a different option. But here's where I really started to geek out about everything coming together, specifically when it comes to sounding real. You see, the thing I've been trying to basically spend the last 6 months proving in terms of virtual amps is how can they sound real? And I've been trying to trick people with that like in a million different ways. And it all comes down to one thing, not the reverb, but the actual room noise and the room ambience that you can get out of a digital modeler. A lot of amp modelers and cab IRs that I've seen usually have one or the other. They usually have a room knob or a reverb. But this, you have both capabilities. And the room noise is what actually makes it sound real. And when I've tried to trick people into thinking that digital amps sound real, which I've done a lot, it's all been because of the room. So we start out with the dry, right? No room noise, no reverb. And I could put on the reverb, put on like a plate. And that sounds cool, but it's like a reverb pedal is on. Where we really get into it, like I said, is with the actual room. You can get this room crazy wide. So it's like you're actually in a huge setting before you even get to the reverb. You can even solo the room. What gets it done for me is the fact that you can combine the two. You can have the plate and the room running at the same time, and you can have that room noise mono, stereo, or wide. That's where it gets, like I said, it sounds so much more real. And the second thing that really gets me that I've noticed that I haven't seen very often is the actual variation of the valve responses, which is crazy. Because like I said, this is a digital unit. So being able to have like an EL84 response, then I can switch to the EL34. Or I have the 6L6. So if I were to list any like quote unquote problems that I had with it or any critiques that I had with it, there would really be two. The first of which was there's no real compressor on board, and that's really just the Corey Wong funk player in me wanting to really go heavy with it. And number two, it does have a tuner on there, but I wish it was a one pedal function, kind of where you could hold it down. But to answer the really big question, was I able to even just for a second forget about amps? And I feel like I was, and I feel like one, this is probably the first video I've ever made in this apartment that my neighbors didn't completely hate. And number two, like I talked about before, the expectations are changing for multi-effects units where you're expected to have everything on one board. And a piece of gear like this that has everything. And like I talked about before with the Architect software, having a simplicity element to it without feeling like you're completely missing out is what made this pedal so underrated for me. Like in finding out about the Amped One and seeing it and seeing that they had already made like this adjustment, I was like, wow, with the amount of cabs and the actual valve reaction you can have on this thing combined with the room noise and having those parameters laid out in a very practical way, that's kind of what put this over the edge with me. But I want to know your thoughts. Have you tried out the Amped One? Have you tried out the Amped Two? What did you think about it? And what is your most underrated pedal currently? But anyway, thank you so much for watching. It was a joy to be able to take this thing out and really use it and see what it can do. If you want to know anything more about the Amped 2 or any of the other gear that was mentioned or shown in this video, I got it all from Sweetwater. They've been a great friend of the channel. Make sure to check out the links in the description. It's one of the best ways to support the channel if that's something you're interested in doing, or if you just want to know anything more about any of the gear in this video, make sure to check out those links. Let me know what other gear you want me to review, and if you had a good time, make sure to like and subscribe, hit the bell notification, and most important of all, have a fantastic day.